I bought the ranch after 30 years of city noise, fake smiles, and HOA board meetings that felt like cult ceremonies. I wanted peace, I wanted cows, and I especially wanted to never hear the words late fee again. The property was 50 acres of sun-scorched heaven on the edge of nowhere, fenced up tighter than Fort Knox with my three bulldogs, Meatball, Chainsaw, and Mildred patrolling like furry tanks. And I swear on my last brain cell, I had no idea the HOA from my previous neighborhood had sneakily extended their jurisdiction out here through some shady annexation scam. But Karen knew. Oh, Karen always knows. She's the HOA president, vice president, treasurer, and local gossip commander-in-chief. She had that stiff spine, perm like a Brillo pad, and a voice that sounded like a smoke alarm choking on a whistle. I thought I escaped her. I even threw a Karen free zone bop you the day I moved in. But 3 weeks later, I get a letter duct taped to my gate. You owe $1,225 in outstanding hoe fines for grass height violations. Pay within 48 hours or face escalated consequences. Grass violations? On a ranch? I laughed so hard I nearly blacked out. Apparently, according to her twisted HOA Bible, prairie grass above 6 inches counted as visual pollution. What's next? Cows mooing too loud? I ignored it, naturally. But Karen doesn't do well with being ignored. That's when it got spicy. First came the drone. It buzzed around my backyard like an obnoxious cyber mosquito, snapping pictures of my unauthorized livestock and non-compliant shed paint color. Chainsaw took that thing out of the sky midair like a furry missile. One chomp, gone. Then came the fines. Digital threats stacked like a game of HOA Jenga. $300 for unregistered equine. I don't even own a horse. $500 for failure to landscape dog poop. I had 3 acres of fenced-in dog territory. If anything, those dogs were fertilizing nature itself. Then on the 3rd week, while I was trimming mesquite with a machete and a root beer, I see it. Karen's dusty gray Prius creeping down my gravel road like she's in a military recon mission. She parks without asking, steps out in kitten heels, and holds up a clipboard like she's summoning Satan himself. "You're trespassing," I yell. She ignores me, nose flared, lips pursed like she's trying to suck in the entire atmosphere. This property falls under the HOA's extended jurisdiction, and as president, I have the right to inspect non-compliant members. "You mean you forged some documents and played Monopoly with county lines?" I shout. "Get off my land." She steps forward. "Wrong move," Mildred growls. Chainsaw's ears perk up. Meatball starts foaming like he's auditioning for Cujo. "If you don't leave right now," I say calmly, "you're going to be inspected by teeth." Karen glances at the dogs, then at her clipboard, as if the paper will protect her. "I'll be back," she huffs and waddles off like a furious penguin in pearls. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the kind to retreat. She was the kind to regroup. Plot. Scheme. Pull out whatever suburban sorcery she had in that clipboard. I fed the dogs steak that night. I figured they'd need the protein, because if she came back uninvited again, she was going to find out why this ranch was no place for HOA parasites. 2 days later, I woke up to the sweet sound of a diesel engine choking on its last breath. Looked out my window, and there it was, a rusted HOA utility truck parked half-assed across my driveway like a crime scene. Karen had returned, but this time, she brought back up. 2 dudes hopped out wearing safety vests that looked like they were stolen off construction cones. One held a measuring wheel, the other carried a leveler like he was about to audit the slope of my soul. Karen stepped out last, holding her precious clipboard like it was the Declaration of Petty Dependence. "You're in violation of HOA Code 9.31a, she announced. "Unauthorized fencing material, unstable porch railings, and failure to display your house number in HOA-approved Helvetica font." I swear she said Helvetica font. My bulldogs were already pacing like linebackers on the 50-yard line. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, wearing nothing but boxers and boots. "You've got 10 seconds to get your Sesame Street SWAT team off my ranch before I introduce them to canine diplomacy." Karen rolled her eyes. "We've already filed trespassing immunity with the county." "Good," I said, sipping my coffee, "because they're going to need immunity from my bulldog's digestive system." The guy with the measuring wheel walked over and said, "Sir, we're just here to assess the finable areas. Nothing personal. Nothing personal." "You're 30 feet inside my property line," I said, pointing at the fence. "So unless you're here to mow grass with your face, I suggest you start backing up." That's when Chainsaw let out a bark that shook a pine cone loose from a tree. The guy with the leveler nearly dropped it and took a step back. They don't bite, Karen said with a smug little smirk. They maul, I corrected. They maul anything that steps foot here without permission. Kids, deer, Girl Scouts, your Prius, doesn't matter. But Karen wasn't fazed. She strutted deeper into the property like she had legal Teflon. The clipboard came out. She started writing up a fresh set of fines, pausing every few seconds to tsk disapprovingly. Meanwhile, the dogs were circling like sharks that smelled HOA blood. Meatball's collar was already vibrating from suppressed rage. One more step, I said, and you activate DEFCON dog. She took that step, right into a freshly dug hole by Mildred. Her heel sank, her ankle twisted, and down she went like a chopped oak tree, clipboard flying like a sad little frisbee. Chainsaw sprinted in, not to bite, just to hover, growl, intimidate. The two guys ran for the truck like someone had lit their reflective vests on fire. Karen squealed, flailed, and then tried to reason with the dog by speaking in slow English like he was a confused tourist. Nice doggy. Good boy. Chainsaw responded by licking her face aggressively and then sitting on her chest. Karen was pinned like a dollar store wrestler. Help! Call animal control, she shrieked. No need, I said. Chainsaw's just expressing his constitutional right to protest tyrannical rule. You'd respect that, right? She threatened legal action, screamed about rabies, and tried to kick him off, but that only made him snuggle in harder. Eventually, I had to call him off with a chicken leg. Karen scrambled to her feet, mud-covered and moaning, grabbing her clipboard like it was a wounded soldier. This isn't over, she growled, limping back to the truck. I leaned over the fence. You bring yourself or anyone else back onto this ranch, Karen, and next time I won't feed the dogs beforehand. They'll be hungry. And yet something told me her next move was already loading in that twisted little mind of hers. I should have known better than to think Karen would take a bulldog body slam and just walk away. No, that woman's soul runs on expired rules, instant coffee, and unprovoked retaliation. 3 days later, I noticed strange tire tracks near my back pasture. I checked my cameras. At 2:17 a.m., a silver van rolled up, parked just out of frame, and a pair of shadowy figures hopped the fence like budget ninjas. They snooped around for 15 minutes before scurrying off, leaving behind nothing but crushed grass and an HOA flyer pinned to my barn door with a fork. A fork. The note read, unpaid fines totaling $4,950. Final notice. Next step, enforcement. I laughed so hard I nearly passed out in the chicken coop. Enforcement? What was she going to do? Repo my tractor? The bulldogs were already on high alert, sniffing the air like the scent of HOA idiocy had a specific flavor. And then, like a bad infomercial, it got worse. The next morning I woke up to find a bright orange notice stapled to my gate, property under investigation by HOA Sanctions Unit. First of all, that's not a thing. There's no such unit. Second, Karen spelled investigation wrong, so naturally I went full DEFCON petty. I fired up the old speakers from my DJ days and aimed them right at the road. Every time someone drove by, they heard dog barks, shotgun pumps, and random screams, like a haunted house was trapped inside my fence. Karen didn't like that. She showed up again 2 days later, this time with a full clipboard battalion, 4 members deep, including a nervous-looking man in a polo that said Community Compliance Officer. As if that meant anything outside of HOA board games. They marched up to my gate, stood in formation like they were posing for a dollar store calendar, and Karen raised a megaphone like a villain preparing a monologue. You are hereby ordered to vacate the property until further inspection is completed by licensed HOA personnel. Unless your clipboard transforms into a search warrant, you're trespassing. I shouted from my porch, sipping sweet tea with Mildred lying across my feet like a judgmental carpet. This is your final warning, Karen yelled. Do not make us escalate. Karen, you couldn't escalate a ladder with instructions, I replied. Now get off my land before I send the boys down. She started to respond, but that's when Meatball barked so hard a bird fell out of a nearby tree. The compliance officer jumped behind Karen like she was a human riot shield. One of the others ran back to the car, tripped, and face-planted into a patch of cactus. Karen stood her ground, but she was visibly trembling. Sweat formed under her over-applied foundation. This land will be condemned if you continue to resist HOA authority. she screamed, waving a document I'm 90% sure was just a printout of her Facebook status. You can't condemn something you don't own, I said. This ain't SimCity, and the only thing getting condemned today is your reputation. That's when Chainsaw slowly trotted up to the fence. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just stared through the slats like a furry hitman calculating consequences. Karen looked at him, then at the clipboard, then back at me. This isn't over, she muttered for the third time like she was casting a spell. Then they left, but not before I noticed something strange. A utility flag staked near my water well with the initials HOA written in marker. Karen was up to something deeper this time, something dirtier. The morning after the clipboard brigade limped off my land, I woke up to no water pressure. I twisted the kitchen faucet, nothing. Checked the barn tap, dry as Karen's personality. Panic didn't set in until I checked the well and found the pump cut clean off like someone played Fruit Ninja with my utilities. Right there next to the pipe was a neon orange stake labeled HOA Code Enforcement Emergency Shutoff. She'd done it. Karen actually sent someone to sabotage my well. She was no longer playing Hal, she was on a villain arc. But here's where it gets wicked. What Karen didn't know is that my property runs on 2 wells. One for the house, one for the livestock. And the second one, still humming like a country lullaby. I patched the pipeline, got the water flowing again, then grabbed my phone and made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my cousin T. Roy, a former Border Patrol dog trainer turned rogue security consultant. Bring the boys, I said. We got HOA insurgents. That evening, T. Roy pulled up in a beat-up pickup with a trailer attached, carrying 2 more bulldogs, Rico and Chaos, both trained in scent detection, crowd control, and psychological warfare. Within an hour, my ranch perimeter was a 4-legged fortress of slobbering justice. But that wasn't enough. I wanted Karen humiliated so hard her grandkids would be born allergic to clipboards. So I did what any sane man with a grudge and a drone license would do. I set up surveillance. 3 drones, 1 hidden camera in the mailbox, and a motion-activated bullhorn rigged to bark out "Trespassers will be eaten." On day 2 of my personal HOA sting operation, I caught gold. My drones spotted Karen sneaking onto my ranch at dawn, alone, wearing black sweats, a visor, and what looked like orthopedic combat boots. She carried a duffel bag and a bucket labeled "Biohazard." I watched as she tiptoed past the barn toward my chicken coop, where she reached into the bucket and started sprinkling something into the soil, probably trying to poison my hens or frame me for a contamination violation. Too bad I'd replaced the chickens with motion-sensing decoys from T. Roy's stash. Karen dumped her mystery powder, posed for what I can only assume was her own body cam, then turned to leave. That's when Rico and Chaos came out of the shadows like ghosts from an action movie. She froze. I hit the bullhorn. "Trespasser detected, initiating dog-based retribution in 3, 2. She screamed, dropped the bucket, and bolted. But she ran the wrong way, straight into the mud pit I had been prepping for drainage. Splash! Full body dive, face first, like she was training for the HOA Olympics. The dogs didn't bite. They didn't need to. Rico barked so sharply her visor launched off like a frisbee. Chaos stood over her with a stare so intense it probably triggered her menopause. I emerged from the barn in full rancher glory, holding up the drone footage on a tablet. "Smile, Karen. You're about to go viral." She was sobbing now, covered in muck and fertilizer, makeup melting off like a wax figure in a sauna. "You've lost it," she cried. "You've gone feral." "You're not wrong," I said. "You come for my well, you try to poison my birds, and now you're trespassing with chemical warfare. This ain't HOA business anymore. It's personal." She begged me not to report it, claimed it was a misunderstanding, said she thought the ranch was abandoned. "Oh, really?" I said. "Did the dogs, security cameras, and the giant private property signs give you that impression?" She had no answer, just whimpers and regret. The sun was barely up, but Karen was already online, blowing up the HOA Facebook page with posts about rogue dogs, illegal mud traps, and psychotic ranchers threatening national security. She uploaded blurry photos of Chaos mid-bark like it was Bigfoot, claimed my bulldogs were genetically modified attack beasts trained by mercenaries, and tagged half the town in a dramatic post titled "My Near-Death Experience with Ranch Terror." The comments were gold. "Karen, you climbed his fence. Isn't this your 3rd near-death this week?" "Sis, You smell like lies and expired mayo. While Karen tried spinning her humiliation into sympathy, I went nuclear. I compiled every drone clip, every trespassing attempt, and even the footage of her dumping that shady chemical dust like she was on a meth farm episode of Breaking Bad. With T. Roy's help, I sent a full complaint to the county board, complete with timestamps, property maps, and a final cherry on top. Proof that the HOA wasn't even legally registered to enforce anything on my land. Turns out, my ranch sat on an annexed stretch of county land excluded from HOA jurisdiction since 1989. You read that right. Karen had been finding me illegally for years. But I wasn't done. No, I wanted the kind of revenge that echoed through suburban nightmares. First, I printed out giant copies of her trespassing face from my surveillance footage and stapled them onto wooden boards. I stuck them outside my gate like wanted posters. Warning, do not feed the Karens. Then, I installed a speaker system by the fence that played her shrieking, "You've gone feral," on a loop. By week's end, her HOA reign was crumbling like a stale cracker. Half the board members quit. One turned state's witness and confessed that Karen had been doctoring meeting notes, and the so-called compliance officer turned out to be her nephew, an unemployed substitute teacher who got paid in Starbucks gift cards. But the real bomb dropped when I got a call from a local reporter named Cassie from Channel 7. "We'd like to do a piece on illegal HOA overreach," she said. "Your story has teeth." "And bulldogs," I replied. She came out that Friday, interviewed me in front of the mud pit, and I even introduced the dogs like they were war heroes. The segment aired Sunday night under the title, "Rancher Turns the Tables on HOA Tyrant, One Man, Six Dogs, and a Bucket of Payback." It went viral. The internet crowned Karen the queen of HOA horror, and her name trended on Twitter under "Had Karen Down." But my favorite moment came when she tried to sue me for emotional distress and canine intimidation. The judge laughed, and asked if she seriously expected to win a case after admitting under oath she trespassed 4 times and shut off my water without authorization. She left the courtroom beet red, publicly humiliated, and with a restraining order banning her from ever stepping within 200 feet of my ranch, which I celebrated with a community barbecue, free bulldog meet and greet, and a special guest appearance by Chainsaw himself. As for the HOA, dissolved. The neighborhood took a vote and burned every fine, fee, and form in a bonfire right outside the old HOA office, which now serves as a dog grooming salon called Karen's Cleanup. Fitting. So next time someone says, "You can't fight the HOA," show them the footage of Karen slipping in my mud pit, sobbing under the watchful eye of chaos. Let them know, on my ranch, justice comes with teeth, sarcasm, and a leash. And that, my friend, is how I made Karen famous, for all the wrong reasons.